pushing the button. You want a clean edit? Pushing the button. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm the worst.
It's freezing. Why are we walking? You jacked the car keys. Oh, that's my car!
Huge IQ, great performance in the Marines, but you gave up. Drugs, petty crime. Never had a job.
Who are you? Your father saved my life.
Dean says you're fair game, boys.
I've had a rather emotional day, so whatever your beef with Eggsy is, and I'm sure it's well-founded, I'd appreciate it if you could just leave us in peace.
You should get out of the way, Granddaddy. You'll get hurt.
Manners maketh man. Do you know what that means? Then let me teach you a lesson. Are we going to stand around here all day, or are we going to fight?
Welcome, everybody, to the Next Reel Film Board, a gathering of thugs to discuss one current release film each and every month. This month, we've gathered to take on Kingsman, The Secret Service, Matthew Vaughn's cinematic take on his diabolically original comic property with Mark Millar and Dave Gibbons. But before we get to that, make sure you head over to thenextreel.com, check out our back catalog of Next Reel film chats, both from our weekly show that Andy and I do on the classics and all 30 of our Film Board very special episodes. You can join the conversation on Facebook or Twitter at The Next Reel. And, of course, don't miss a single show by subscribing for free in iTunes or your podcast application of choice. Joining the roundtable of thugs this evening, playing the role of the bifurcated Lancelot in this evening's performance, Steve Sarmento.
Good evening, everybody.
And clear-eyed, full-hearted Galahad himself, Tommy Handsome.
Hello, friends.
And always in the corner of the round table, our fearless Arthur, Andy Nelson.
Manners maketh man.
And I'm Pete Wright. And tonight I'm playing the role of the tailor. Gentlemen, I deeply enjoyed this movie. That said, it was not what I was expecting in the whole. I was worried that I was in for another kind of Get Smart or the like, but this was foul-mouthed and, in parts, astoundingly and brilliantly violent. And still, I walked out with this giant smile on my face. It is a feeling I can only compare with my experience walking out of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's right.
Oh,
wow.
Guardians of the Galaxy. I dropped Galaxy. So, around the table, gentlemen, am I alone in my fun with this film? Andy?
No, I completely loved it. I had a great time all the way through. I agree with you. I was not really sure what to expect from it. It looked like it was going to be kind of just a kind of a younger take on a James Bond sort of thing, and it went in a lot of different directions. The excessive violence and language, and but also just kind of the fun of not taking itself too seriously while also taking itself seriously. And I enjoyed it completely.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Okay, we're so far 2 for 4. Steve.
Well, I have to say I'm on board with you guys. I really enjoyed this film and how it played with the conventions of the genre while remaining loyal to those. So it's giving you something that's fresh while not so far removed that it's disappointing because it's not giving you what you're expecting out of that type of film. It gives you what you want, but in a different way. I'm really looking forward to our conversation because I think there's some interesting dynamics in this film and some larger things to discuss about the sort of Arthurian legend aspect of the film that I did not expect going in. So I'm looking forward to discussing that with you gents tonight.
Oh, I like that. You're getting all literary. Check you out. Tommy.
Well, 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Oh, no. No.
I'm just kidding. I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. Like, I really, really loved it. And the theater that I saw it in, there were about 3 applause breaks, including the one at the end of like when sequences that were so stunning and so over the top and so insane would end that people would just burst into applause. And that doesn't happen a lot, especially in Los Angeles.
I was going to say, is that just how movies are in Los Angeles? Because we don't applaud in Portland.
Did nobody applaud? I mean,
a gentleman does not applaud at a movie.
Applause maketh the man. It was, I think usually LA is known for being jaded, but it really worked. And the people were just having so much fun and screaming and yelling. And I kept waiting for the movie to not jump the shark, but to just cross some sort of a line where it's like, okay, it's just too many toys. He's just has too much freedom. And it just almost never did for me. I thought it was phenomenal. I loved it.
Are you sure you're not talking about Jupiter Ascending?
I might be talking about Jupiter Ascending. Which one has Channing Tatum as a wolf man or a fox person? Ugh. Yeah, America, you're welcome. I took the hit for you. I saw Jupiter Ascending. Learn from me. All right.
Okay, where would you like to start on this? I think I'm most interested in this idea of how this film handles conventions and expectations around the genre. Who said that? Was that Andy or Steve?
I think
that was Steve. That was Steve.
Steve, yeah. Start us off with that. What is your what do you mean by that?
Sure. Well, I mean, you get your typical hero on an adventure, the call to adventure. And for those of you that are aware of some of the more current trends in filmmaking and screenplay writing and storytelling, there is a moment early on where our hero is in the car chase and avoids hitting a cat. It is his quote-unquote saving the cat moment, which I thought was a nice nod to those that might be in the know with that terminology. But it's giving us that moment where we realize our hero, who may be a bit of a troublemaker, a bit of a scallywag, has a heart in the right place. So it's something like, okay, here's that moment. I can see those pieces. But what it did differently was it then layered on top of that, no, not only is he saving the cat, then he's now crashed the car. The police are there. He tells his mates that are with him to get out of the car and then rams into the police car, basically taking the hit himself. He's now sacrificing himself to let his friends get away. You know, they're not going to get arrested. I thought, oh, we've got sort of a double layered, do-gooder here. He's not only going to not plow over the cat, he's also, based on making that choice, knowing that now they're going to get caught, saying, hey, this is on me. And I thought that's interesting, of giving us the expected and then adding a little bit to it. We get the training sequences, but they were a little bit different twists on that, and we can get into discussions about the whole Arthurian piece and Merlin and that later on. But it gave us all those things, and the movie other points even called attention to itself, of having your villain say at one point, this is a moment in this type of movie where I'm going to give you my whole big plan, and I'm going to come up with some big convoluted way to try to kill you, and you're going to come up with an even more convoluted way to get out of this. But this isn't that movie.
This was the repeated conversation between, and I'm not sure if this is too much on the nose, but between Hart and Valentine,
yes. So it's we're expecting that monologuing moment, but they don't give us that. But to me, I wasn't disappointed with that. I was like, oh, okay, you're aware of that can be something that disappoints audiences, or can be an expectation.
And literally have knowledge of spies in movies. It references James Bond, and Jack Bauer.
I had no idea there were so many JBs in this.
I know, that was pretty funny.
So to be sort of world wise like that, but it didn't come off as navel gazing, and it didn't come off as sort of a Screamish kind of spoof of the genre.
Exactly.
That's much more what I expected.
An evolution of it.
Yeah, that's much more what I expected going in. I expected this to be much more sort of spoofy, and I probably shouldn't have, given Colin Firth's casting in this film. I mean, I just think he is likely above the spoof.
Well, I think part of that came from the marketing, because Samuel L. Jackson as the villain in this is it's a very over-the-top type of character. And when you see him in the trailer, it kind of comes across as, oh, this is just going to be kind of a send-up of the James Bond type of spy movies, because you've got this over-the-top villain that could easily fit into a Will Ferrell spy movie.
Like an Austin Powers.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And so that's, I think, the danger of having a character like that and using it in the marketing, because it's really hard to tell what the movie was going to be like. I mean, clearly we had problems understanding what we were getting into when we went to sit down and watch this.
Did you guys find the over the topness of Samuel Jackson's Valentine? I mean, with the lisp and the serving McDonald's at the dinner. I mean, did you find that was too much in terms of his portrayal? I guess I'm speaking specifically of the lisp.
Yeah. Let's talk about what we're talking about.
It didn't bother me. I mean, it definitely was different, and I enjoyed that it was a villain that I hadn't seen before. He had a lisp. He served, McDonald's at his fancy dinner. He, what was the other thing? Oh, and he abhorred violence, and he would projectile vomit with violence. Yeah. And it's not something that I'd ever seen in a villain. Normally villains are so mean, and they're the ones who are just, the Kaiser Soze's running around slicing people up. It was really refreshing to kind of see him as this real wuss who just couldn't handle any of that.
I wonder how much of that, because legend has it that he showed up the first day on set with the lisp.
Oh, really?
If you guys have read this and said to Matthew Vaughn, no, I love the idea of someone who has all the power and all the strength and all the evil, but kind of being, really vulnerable and not sounding that sort of way. And Matthew Vaughn went, okay, we'll try. And then the studio started to insist that he ADR all of his lines, and Matthew Vaughn, in true Matthew Vaughn style, refused. So I wonder if he got some of that idea from Unbreakable, from playing Mr. Glass.
Yeah.
Which is a good example of that kind of paradigm. Was any of that interesting?
No, it wasn't. I didn't. I thought about it in terms of here he is playing another sort of supervillain, but again, somebody that's not the typical.
That is robbed of super strength, that can't handle violence, all those this is just another sort of take on that, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think once again, it's that exercise of contrasts that makes the character, I think, more interesting. And I guess the only reason I keep picking at it a little bit is because, I have to imagine that so much, and now hearing how you describe that he just shows up on day one with the lisp, that much of what he was hired to do was to, bring the Sam Jackson snakes on a plane, Nick Fury, like we want the badass. And I think I think those choices make him more vulnerable, certainly, and make him a more interesting villain, but then call into question, is Samuel L. Jackson the guy to pull off the lisp in this film, or does it end up walking that spoof line a little bit too closely? That's the part I can't quite let go of.
Stunt casting?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like taking someone who's so known for his strong voice.
But you brought up Mr. Glass, which I think is a really excellent comparison. But that film was very, very different.
Right. For me, it didn't get annoying. It didn't take away from it. I would have liked the further contrast. It worked as stunt casting for me in a way that was interesting, because I'm kind of tired of seeing Samuel L. Jackson play Samuel L. Jackson.
Right.
But I also, just as a side note, would have liked someone who didn't have vulnerabilities of, say, speech, also, like, who was more of a traditional villain of brawn and all that kind of stuff, that still gets sick whenever violence is there. That could be more fun. The fact that he had a lisp softened that. It made that all of the same kind of joke instead of a real contrast. Instead, it was just a contrast against Mr. Jackson against Mr. Jackson.
That's a really interesting point. That's like what you want more is the effect of, what if the Incredible Hulk was actually, prone to nausea whenever he saw blood.
Had a wheat allergy.
Wheat allergy. He started sneezing in fields. Yeah. Okay. But, when you think about the, again, the exercise of contrast between, this wonderful kind of tailor-made independent spy agency next to the sort of billionaire boys club of Valentine and his technocrats, I found that really a delightful exercise of contrast. I really enjoyed watching Colin Firth in this role of the action hero, and Mark Strong as Merlin. I really enjoyed this unique take on this agency.
It was a great idea for an agency that worked really well. And yeah, Colin Firth, just watching him in this, it made me wish that there was an era, maybe 20 years ago where he had an opportunity to play James Bond, because I thought he was so good as this polished British super spy. He was so much fun to watch in the role, and all of them were really.
He was incredibly natural in the role. I would not have expected his...
I never would have believed that it could be possible until the bar scene. Oh, no, I guess he had action a little bit earlier on, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Right.
And it worked great. And he looks good in a suit. This whole movie is filled with amazing costumes, whatever you call that, wardrobes.
Seriously, did you not want to walk out and immediately go to a fine tailor? I mean, I think since I saw the movie 24 hours ago, I've used the word bespoke 1,500 times.
Yeah, I know. It has such a consistent and convincing sense of style from all of, and so consistent again, from all of Colin Firth's suits to when Eggsy ends up in suits to all of Samuel L. Jackson's characters' range of just ball caps, sneakers, and hoodies, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That it was just so much fun. It kind of reminded me of like Tarantino a bit.
Yeah, a bit. Particularly when I saw when Jackson comes out of the Kingsman tailor shop and goes for his top hat.
Right.
Yeah, that was great.
That was a nice touch.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we always talk about world building, Pete, and this was a really good example of this new spy organization story that we've been introduced to that created this world that worked really well on all levels. I had so much fun watching this spy organization, the way that they were tied into this tailor shop. Everything about it just worked really well and made great sense.
It reminded me of another movie. Actually, it didn't remind me. My friend, shout out to Darnell Smith, who I saw it with, one of the two friends I saw it with, said it reminded him a lot of Wanted. Do you remember the movie Wanted?
Well, yeah. Matthew Vaughn again based on a graphic novel.
Oh, that was Wanted was directed by Matthew Vaughn?
No, it was Timur. What's his name?
Timur Bekmambetov.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
But it has a lot in common with world building, secret agencies, and fabric.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is because I'm going to bring up this whole Arthurian piece, is knowing that it was based on some type of graphic novel. I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense that you'd have something with layers like that. That you'd have time to maybe in a graphic novel that you expand on a little bit more. But as I researched it, none of that is present in that original source material. It's. I mean, there's some interesting things
in
that
the graphic
are
novel.
In the graphic novel, it does not have those Arthurian pieces. It's much more rooted in current contemporary pop culture. For example, this is an interesting piece of stunt casting in the graphic novel. The scientist that's kidnapped at the beginning is a scientist named Mark Hamill. And so in the film, of course, we have a scientist portrayed by the actor
Mark Hamill.
Oh, weird.
So they did some clever things with that. But then I thought, okay, so in your source material, you don't have all this Arthurian stuff. So what is that bringing to the world building? And it to me, it imbued it with so much more depth and history to it, that it's this organization that has its roots going back how far. We get the origin story to it, but that they've sort of latched onto these code names, harkening back to sort of the roots of their country and Arthur and all these legends. And as my brother that I saw it with, we were discussing it. We said, okay, so we've got Merlin, we've got Arthur, Galahad, Lancelot, and then we're like Eggsy, and you got Roxy. We're like, well, how do these guys fit in there? Maybe they don't. And he said, oh, no. Look at this. Eggsy is, if you listen to the sounds, the G sound can sound like an X, right? So you get Excalibur. And Roxy, you've got the rock that Excalibur, you've got to pull the sword out of the stone. And I thought, okay, are we getting too far?
Whoa.
Perhaps not. But I thought it's fun just playing with the names. Where do these things go? And Merlin being sort of your technological guy there. So we thought, okay, are there more aspects to the Arthurian legend? We see Arthur sitting down there with the other Kingsmen projected holographically, almost his round table, although it's rectangular. So these guys sort of being the knights on these quests to protect the realm. And I thought there's so much more to this, that it's just resonating sort of on that mythic level in so many ways as Eggsy goes on his journey to become that Kingsman and the quests that he has. And I thought This is where you can do something simple, but if you do it really well, it just adds something to that world building component that sets it apart from just, oh, this could have been another Jason Bourne type movie. It could have been another something, but it really set it apart as something unique and helped define itself.
And that's so interesting that it wasn't in the graphic novel, that if it was more, what you said, pop culture reference, that's the kind of thing that tips the movie into more spoof and I lose interest. The fact of that when you really ground it in something that seems reverential and historical and real, then it's thrilling to have all of these pop culture references and people to know who Jack Bauer is, on screen. That's a really smart change then.
Yeah.
I did order the graphic novel, but I haven't started reading it yet, and I am less interested now as a result.
I read a couple of reviews of it, and the reviews were not terribly good on their graphic novel. It's surprising that some of the people that they were saying that it's like very crude compared to the film that he made.
Yeah, I love I love the sense of it, though, the fact that this is his property. This almost feels like a more, I don't know, final draft of the idea.
Right. Yeah, and that's why the reason I went to sort of look at the source material was it's the Kingsman, Kingsman, the Secret Service, and I thought, are they trying to launch a franchise with this? Because how much source material is there? When I see Eggsy and sort of the local mobsters hang out at a pub called the Black Prince, I'm like, again, you're tying in all this. Like, is this really extended allegory in these graphic novels? And when I saw that it wasn't, I thought, oh, okay. I'm sort of glad that maybe this is just the standalone, because we do have a nice complete story. Yes, it could be an origin story, but then there's that challenge of where does it go from here? And I'm very satisfied with just following Eggsy on his journey as we see, sort of the Kingsmen have to go through this, it's the transformation of handing it on to the next generation, which is even referenced early on as we learn about Galahad's choice early on of how he selected his earlier candidate, Eggsy's father, and how that he was sort of going outside the scope of the types of candidates they usually pick. And he tells, Arthur, well, the times are changing. We've got to keep up. We've got to be flexible. And I thought, we see that now with Eggsy coming on and some of the changes that he brings to it, that it can cause something that perhaps has become stagnant to be reborn again into something new, which was, to me, a very thrilling journey to see happen. I think the dichotomy that they set up, even in that first trial, where all the recruits are in the room and it starts flooding with water, we see Eggsy sort of go into survival mode. He wants to get out. Everybody else that, your typical, here's the brilliant, elite, know how to breathe. And I thought, as I see them snaking pipes down into the toilets and they're breathing, I thought, okay, that's great. You can breathe. So you're just willing to maintain, but Eggsy is actively, how do I get out of here? I'm going to try this door. I'm going to smash this mirror. I'm not content with just, okay, I'll endure this until conditions change. He's going to actively seek to change the environment. He's going to assert control, whereas the others took a much more passive role of, well, I'm just going to be able to breathe, and then I'll just wait and see if I pass the test. And it seemed like that was always how Eggsy was pushing things, was sort of that street roughness that he brought to everything, in a different perspective that gave some of those twists to things that were fun and enjoyable. And probably
he wasn't being too academic about it. He wasn't.
Right, and I think the loudest, the most boisterous our audience got was when you've got Colin Firth asking him, "Have you seen Trading Spaces? Have you seen Nikita? Have you seen Pretty Woman? Have you seen And he's like, Eggsy's like, no. He's like, oh, it's this this story about are you willing to transform yourself through this process? And he says, oh, like My Fair Lady?
Yeah, it's fantastic,
so great.
But then, of course, to bring it back at the end to looking good, Eggsy. Feeling good, Merlin.
Right, they did reference
exactly.
Brilliant.
Can I ask something as a side note, just for the film board?
Okay.
And listeners, please, let's open the phones. Feel free to. Do you guys, whenever there's a hold your breath moment in movies, do you ever try to hold your breath alone with characters?
I do.
Do you? I
Yes.
always do. I wonder if maybe that's something that everyone does and no one has ever done.
Can I stay underwater that long, or is the editing causing problems?
I do, and I'm always so proud. It's like, what is the margin of the margin of victory when I can sit there and hold my breath as long as they're holding their breath, but I know I couldn't swim or punch through a glass mirror.
Oh, that's a good point, because then there's like aliens after you.
Right.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
There are limits.
Yeah.
Tom, I just warn you, do not try that experiment with the Luc Besson movie, The Big Blue. I don't want to.
Yeah, right.
We'll see. Actually, I got to go. Right.
So back to this film. Let's a little bit more Matthew Vaughn. Just a little bit more Matthew Vaughn. So obviously it's based on his thing. He doesn't have a whole slew of credits to his name, but he actually does have a slew of producer credits, but his writing and directing credits, just a few. But of them, there isn't a movie in there that I don't really, really like much. From Layer Cake to Stardust to Kick-Ass to X-Men First Class to this one. What's your sense?
Kick-Ass too? Okay, good. He didn't?
No,
he didn't.
I assumed
He was a producer on it, but he didn't direct it.
Sure.
Right.
What is your sense of his performance as director?
Very big.
Not afraid to take chances.
Wait, I want to try my sentence again. Edit that out. Very big. I don't know why I said that. Edit that out, clean edit point, and go. I thought it was quite remarkable. I mean, he's really not afraid of putting himself out there, that the director is a big part of this movie, obviously. That it's so stylistic and all that kind of stuff. Is that what you were kind of saying, Andy?
That's exactly what I saw from this. This is like we've said. This could have gone off the rails
at any second.
Yeah, and he managed to keep it all in while still maintaining his presence. Whether it's just kind of the craziness of the villain and his plan, and all of these. I mean, World War Z type of scenes with people mauling each other, to just like some of the crazy language, and then you have just these like odd moments with like the princess when she's talking to our hero as he's trying to rescue her, and just strange little things that pop up like that. To the climactic. Well, it's not the climactic, but the moment toward the climax when they actually push the button and trigger all these devices in people's necks. I mean, it's so insane. I mean, it's insane, but somehow it all works so well, and it's I think a strongly directed film where the director's presence is very, very felt, but done in a way where he just is able to keep his arms around it and maintain it the whole time.
While doing huge action scenes in different kind of ways. Like the opening pub one is very, at times, campy. Mm-hmm. And then the Freebird brawl in the church is super gritty and crazy. I mean, it's kind of a tour de force.
That whole scene, I mean, just a testament to the editors on that, because there are so many components of that where it feels like a single long take, and I'm looking and there's whip pans and this and that, but you there's so much chaotic, violence surrounding you. You know where you are, and it seems like these long takes, and I know they're not. I mean, there's so much that's being spliced together, but there's a flow to that that is just thrilling and just overwhelming. I mean, in a good way. It's just this just brutality across the screen that just is relentless but thrilling. And to make that to something where I didn't feel overwhelmed or that it became just
or tedious.
Like tedious. Yes, you don't have it's just here's kill another one. That everything, there was always a twist, there was always a spin to how is he going to make it through this? What arsenal does he have on hand? What creative ways can we use? And keeping that fresh was just, I thought that is the sequence that I'm looking forward to seeing over and over again. It's just one of those great, thrilling action sequences.
Agreed. And also and another thing potentially to talk about, Pete, I don't mean to but like is talk about the ultra violence in this movie.
That's where I was going to go with this, because it is so the violence is real. I mean, it's comic action violence until the scene in the church, when it becomes
women, men, old women,
yeah, something different.
No one is safe.
No one is safe. I mean, I think Andy was right. There is a mauling in there, but there's also the classic grenade in the pocket, head in the pew. There's the flaming head. There is the. I mean, it goes places that. And I think there was a head on a pike in there, maybe more than once. It takes it and it escalates the violence so quickly. What does that? What's he going for structurally there?
Well, at least he smartly sets it up for us right at the beginning, where you get a person sliced in half. So at least you know there's going to be intense violence throughout this film. I mean, you see people's limbs getting severed all over the place. You know that it's going to happen. That was, I think, the first place where it was taking a much more serious look at the violence, albeit setting us up in a location where it was, maybe we were saying a little bit, it's okay, that those people ended up being the ones who died. Not that that's really what they're trying to say there, but it was set us.
I think it
absolutely was. Not only was that the statement, but the statement that it comes at the hands of technology in such a divisive church environment. Not just any church environment, but a particular church environment at the hands of this technological innovation, and then displaying such violence. I think it absolutely was part of the statement.
He would have called it Westboro if he could.
Yeah, I think you're right.
He has Obama, in the movie. So I think he absolutely would have.
I'm sorry, Andy, go on.
No,
I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, I was trying to, delicately go over that, but you're right. I mean, they probably were.
But it's also mass. It's also mass murder, and so
it's an incredibly brutal mass murder scene where he's one of our heroes ends up essentially killing pretty much everybody inside this church, and it's pretty horrific, and it's done in a way where it obviously fulfills a plot element of the story. As he's kind of taken over, and we see the effects of this awful thing that our villain can actually do, and it was really interesting. I was thinking about that, and it's just like this is the type of thing that James Bond villains often try to set up, but I've never actually seen one done in a way where so many people end up dying in a James Bond film, and that's the interesting difference that this film was kind of. It took that turn where I don't know. I guess I just wasn't expecting that level of serious violence in a film like this.
Yeah, I think to your point, Andy. I mean, you made the point that he set us up with the violence by the split. The split. Lancelot in the beginning, and I would say the kind of violence we experience throughout the film compared to the violence in the church it's very different. The severed arms and things at the hands of the gazelle, at the legs of the gazelle, was much more sort of comic. Yeah, that was her name. Was much more sort of comic violence. But once we got into the church, it took on a much more sort of human tone, and I think it that's the part that makes a much bigger statement on me, certainly.
Well, and when I said he set us up with the violence, I mean I don't mean that he set us up for like the serious violence, but he at least set the stage for this is going to be a bloody film.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
It was the tonal shift going from the comic book graphic violence of people getting split perfectly down the middle to the church massacre where people are just killing each other all willy-nilly, and it ended up being a much more brutal take on it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah, there's the difference between hired hitmen protecting somebody or bodyguards fending off an attacker versus when you see the general population turning on each other and ripping each other to shreds. We see that in the church, then we see it on a larger scale later on. And there's something, a little bit more shocking when you see, ordinary people of all ages turning on each other very violently versus, large, nameless European gents, going after their guns, which we see, across every single spy movie ever made. Very rarely do we see just, typical people on the street, going after each other with such, aggression and violence. I agree. I understand that, this is going to be violent. There's going to be severed limbs. There's going to be blood. But I think that's where he ups the stakes to. You haven't seen this before. And it's to Pete's point, there's often the threat from the villain, but very rarely do we see let's do like the test study case to see if this thing really works.
And we're going to use one of our heroes, one of our professed heroes, to execute
the biggest weapon. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's when the movie, the Freebird sequence was when the movie became, for me, like so thrilling. Because I was upset by it, and I'm upset when we talk about it like this. But during the movie, I was so thrilled. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And so that's when it became like, this seems like one of the weirdest, riskiest mainstream movies in a long time. Can you imagine the amount of studio notes he must have ignored?
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Can you, from the fact that it's a hard R starring a kid. Like, it's so... This is the exact opposite of Jupiter Ascending. Where it's like everyone just sort of being like, okay, we're going to knuckle down and let's just go for it. And this one is a success, and Jupiter Ascending is such a disaster. Sorry, I just have to bring up Jupiter Ascending every 20 minutes.
All right, good.
Because I saw it.
It's almost a sponsorship break.
Yeah. So do you?
So the other sequence that I found interesting, and again, this is where we're sort of playing with the conventions of the genre and putting a twist on them, is when we're in the villain's sort of lair. His underground, in the side of the mountain fortress, and Eggsy is in there to, execute his mission, and we think he's done for. Because he's being chased by all these guys in white. And I'm looking at the cell block where, like, the princess is kept. And I'm like, there is so much Star Wars going on right now because you've got stormtroopers chasing the guy. He's like, are you a princess? I was just almost waiting for, aren't you a little short to be a spy? But it didn't, it's again that I'm familiar with that. I see that there's those shades of that there, but it didn't move across into over the top, cheesy, corny. I was like, oh, you're playing with that, something familiar again. And I thought it was just handled very well, executed well, to the point where you may not, notice it upon first viewing, but I think just some of the shots, down the long hallway, the cells on the side, it just really just rang to me of like, he's hearkening back to Star Wars and the young hero on his quest going into the heart of, the villain's, fortress that's going to destroy everything. But again,
and as
I'm
you
like,
said early on, there's a drop with Mark Hamill. So he
yes,
goes that world.
You're already there. Yeah.
You're already there. But again, I thought, how is he pulling this off where I'm still so excited and thrilled and not cynical about this, because it could cross over into that so easily when you touch on things as sacred as Star Wars, but to be able to do it in that way that, again, just brings so much, I want to say, joy in watching this film. That, yes, there's horrible amounts of violence, but it is so much fun to see these characters in this world.
Yeah,
I bet what it helps him. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm interrupting.
No, not at all. Go ahead, Tom.
But what gets him a lot of that leeway, being Matthew Vaughn, is the casting was phenomenal.
That's
if
true.
You really believe your characters, and you're okay. There's a lot of actors you wouldn't be okay slaying through a church filled with people. But Colin Firth, you can't take your eyes off of him. Yeah. And then the guy, Taron Egerton, or Shaftesbury, I don't know what his name is. Taron, is it Taron?
Egerton?
I think it's Taron Egerton Shaftesbury.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. Like, that kid is a star.
Yeah.
I thought he was so great. And so that's a big help too.
That's true.
And I think it was an interesting split, but in the film also, where you have essentially kind of a James Bond-esque type of story with the Kingsman, Colin Firth, Merlin and Galahad and all these guys.
Michael Caine.
On their mission Right. They're performing their mission. But then you also have this second story of this training of this new recruit, kind of the origin story, really. So you it's like you've got the typical spy movie that we've all seen. You also have the typical origin story that we've all seen, but it's blended together in a way where we're introduced to this spy world, but we have a character that we can kind of, we are this young kid. Yeah, Eggsy is kind of us, and we are getting thrust into this world and seeing it through his eyes, through these fresh eyes that I really bought into. And it was just an interesting blend of those two types of stories that we've seen so often that worked really well, and it made the story a little more interesting for my taste, that I got to actually see both of those blended into one.
I'm so glad you said that. I had the exact same thought. The power of parallel versus sequential storytelling, right? The comparison between this and the other kind of YA properties, from the Hunger Games to particularly Divergent, Insurgent, where you get through this, you have to go through the linear process without getting the benefit. I mean, the benefit of seeing the story really play out. I think it makes this story so much more rewarding because we get it's like action storytelling in a microwave. We get everything. We get the indoctrination piece of it, but we also get the sort of more hard-hitting intrigue of the A story play out at the same time. I thought that was really, really well done.
Well, they do so much because of understanding storytelling with things that we don't need to see. Because when Eggsy's in there, sort of the assault on trying to get to Valentine, and he's taken, and he's, all these troops are after him, and he's flipping and turning and doing all the things we've seen, Colin Firth do earlier, the umbrella. We don't need to see the training sequences where he learns how to do those things, because we know, we've got these trials that he's going through. We don't need to see every single component of the training, because we see Galahad, what the end outcome of that training will be. And since Eggsy is now at that point, we know he's capable of these things. It's not like, yes, we know he was in the military. He's a smart kid, but, being able to flip, turn, bend, and shoot, 3 guys at the same time. And, we didn't need to see him develop those skills. And I think that economy in storytelling gave them so much room to balance that out. So it is that.
That's a good point. That's really smart.
Both sides of the story, because we know where the training leads to. We know what that person's like, and we can get that sort of parallel storytelling. I'm hoping we get more of that, because as storytellers, like as you point out, Pete, these YA properties, that so many of them are starting to look similar. Well, why do we need to see those things? If we've seen The Maze Runner and Hunger Games and Divergent, and they keep showing us the same things, the same types of things, then that becomes part of our common vocabulary. And as storytellers, we can skip over that because we know our audience understands those components. Let us get on to the bigger story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think this was a real triumph there. Can we talk just a little bit about the cinematography and some of the editing choices? Because if there was one area of weakness for me, this was it. And it's only in the action sequences. Anybody guess why? Nothing. Nobody else was bugged by this?
Yeah, no, I totally was. Go ahead. I have options, but
I just this is a film that's on premise is so staid and classy and is generally shot really very cleanly. The cinematography by George Richmond, and I think it, I can't help but compare this to oh goodness, what's our other favorite movie with the bathroom fight, Andy?
Shadow Monster.
Cornetto 3. What was it? World's End. At the end of the universe.
Jack Ryan and Shadow's Monster.
So
there was a bathroom fight in that.
There was. This was a better one. One of the things I really liked so much about that bathroom fight was it was frenetic. It was just a lot of arms and limbs, but the way they shot it, I think it was very clear. I mean, I never lost my place in the action, and I think when we're introduced to Hart and his fighting style in the beginning, the film is sped up so much that it gives you, even if it wasn't intending to do so, it was this god-awful sort of shaky cam variant that that I found myself just getting dizzy and lost in where I wanted to see some of these wonderful setups, these wonderful executions of action fighting that I felt like was just lost in their decision to kind of execute the film this way in these sequences. Was nobody bugged by this?
In certain sequences, or
it
all
was
the sequences?
it was just the action. Those the two that really stand out to me were the opening sequence in the bar,
right.
Manners maketh the man, and in the church. The church felt a little bit different to me, just because it's sort of otherworldly by the time the music is going, and we know that
even the film stock seems to get blanched.
Right.
Like it visually takes a whole different look.
Right,
yeah.
because we know the technology is taking us to another world, right? The sound is changing the world. So I give that a little bit of a pass. Visually, it was just as difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. I wanted a little bit more distance. I wanted a little bit more, maybe it's a conservative approach to what was going on. Let the stunts, let the grotesquerie kind of stand on its own. I find myself saying,
I will always want that, but this, I guess it's so much worse in other films that in this one I gave it a pass.
Is it more just because, like, this? I mean, in a way, the man behind Kick-Ass, it felt very Kick-Ass. And Kick-Ass was a much more kind of crass, rough and tumble superhero sort of thing. This was classy British spies, so it should have had a little more classy feel to the fighting. Is that what you're hinting at?
I think that's a fair way to kind of reflect that. I do. I feel like the setup of the film was such that the payoff in these action sequences was a distraction.
What personally made the difference for me, and I can just say it really quick and then I'll stop talking, is that while there was shaky cam sped up stuff, especially in the church I'm talking about, there were, and I know that I believe Steve or Andy or Pete or I said this before, was that it made it seem so flowing into each other and almost like one long take. But while there was shaky cam and whip pans left and right, there were really long takes for an action sequence.
Right.
So that for me made up the difference, where if you're not cutting it to shreds, then I still got the idea of where is this person to this person. That made enough of a difference for me at the end.
Okay, I can see that. For
me, and I know that this happens later on with Eggsy when he's fighting, and I can't remember. I have to go back and look again, because I think it may happen in the church fight scene. There are times that I recall, and I don't think it happens in the bar fight, where the camera goes into character first-person point of view. Because I recall it with Eggsy, like running down the hallway, turning, shooting guys. But I thought it may have happened a couple times in the church as well, where, because we are in there, and then we cut to Eggsy viewing what's going on the laptop.
That's Doom Cam.
So
I wasn't the only one that saw that. That's incredible.
But to me, it didn't bother me, because I think the dichotomy that Andy's talking about is one of the thrilling things of being the Kingsman. If we can have on the surface level, we are these refined gentlemen and we do have manners, but when pushed and we become that instrument that is necessary to solve the problem, and it can be a very brutal killing machine. And I think that's sort of the same thing we've gotten with Daniel Craig's James Bond, is not just the gentleman but the brute underneath. And I like that dichotomy, that balance, so that he can just decimate that gang of guys and then sit down. I'm going to finish my Guinness and I've got my manners, because that's what's appropriate in society. But when I have to deal with people that don't understand those things, I will become something else as necessary.
Okay, you're swaying me. I can't help but come back to this idea that when you make such a beautiful ballet of violence, you actually want people to be able to see it. And that's the part that gets back to me, and how much the role of your choices of, in this case, film speed, because I think you're right. I think editing, was really generally very conservative, particularly in that sequence. I mean, it's practically kind of Birdmanian, where it just feels, like you say, it's just one long take, even though they're using trickery to make it feel otherwise. The sense of just film speed, the role that plays in the narrative execution, I think is worth note. That's all. I'll leave it at that.
Oh no, I think it's something that I will definitely note, and on viewing a second time, pay attention to, because I think there you can get in that fallacy of if I've got something that's very confusing and chaotic going on, I'm going to have my filmmaking be confusing and chaotic, and that doesn't work. And that's just a fallacy of, well, I'm trying to convey that emotion or that sense in my viewers because that's what my character's going through, but it becomes a barrier, and I think that's sort of where you're on the edge of, Pete, of it. I know the character is there's a lot going on and it can be disorienting, but I as an audience member shouldn't, because I should always be able to understand what's going on and why and where things are coming from. So I look forward to a second viewing to sort of see where things lie on that spectrum.
Well, and I should add, there is probably a practical consideration too, which is, how thuggish do our characters really look pulling off this kind of stuff when played at even a quarter of the speed that we were.
Right.
Yeah, that's really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Production design, just a little bit. I know we've already dabbled in this area, but oh my goodness,
Loved it.
To me, it just shines a spotlight on the brilliance and balance that is this film. When I really never felt like I wasn't getting enough of the hidden rooms, the set design, the gadgets, the clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, everything worked so well together. It wasn't a film where I walked out saying, "Gosh, I wish they would have given me more anything." There was never a moment where I didn't feel like I wasn't being well taken care of, and I think so much of it goes to the brilliant work of Paul Kirby and production designer and the team.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's just
Definitely.
magic. You want to spend more time in that world.
And Ariane Phillips in the costumes too. I mean, we've already talked about them, but all of that works together so well to kind of create this brilliant and just impeccable world.
But do you think that, like, Matthew Vaughn is either, I know I'm giving too much credit to just the director, but, like, do you think he's a genius all of a sudden, or he kind of also got lucky? Just
what
a
do you
little
mean?
bit. I don't know. Like, this is just such a fully formed world and style and sensibility, while being gutsy, while being insane, while always being on the edge of falling apart. And yet it never did for us.
Well, he had the source material, so at least he already had the world created, even though, as
But Steve was
pointed
saying
out,
that a lot of that world, it seems like he took the best parts and then, helped invent even better parts.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying, is he had a kind of source material created, and then from that, he and then, was it Jane Goldman, I think, was the co-writer on this, were able to work together to kind of, expand on it and make something more out of it. And I think they just moved in all the right directions. I don't know if I'd say that either he or Jane are a genius, but they both certainly have been involved in some pretty strong projects and very, very creative projects. I mean, Stardust is a very creative property. Kick-Ass, the X-Men stories, all of these things are big types of things that have a lot of interesting world building that I think that they've generally succeeded at doing.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, I think if you haven't seen Stardust in a while, I just watched it a couple of weeks ago with my kids, because it is a wonderfully magic film. But looking at, again, if you're talking about genius and being able to balance things, Stardust, earlier in his career, the whole sequence with Robert De Niro with the lightning pirates and the dress, and to have Robert De Niro be able to pull off that role, and for that to fit into the story, and for it to not come off again as going too far, it seems to me he's always got that ability to push enough to go, wow, this is really interesting, but not so far that it comes off the rails. And I think he was able to demonstrate that even that far back in his career on his second film after Layer Cake. So I think it is something that's, I want to say, sort of characteristic of his style. If I'm going to push things enough, but not so far that I derail what I'm trying to get done and that it becomes a distraction or undermine story.
And I didn't mean to make it sound like I was trying to S-word on Matthew Vaughn at all. I was just wondering seeing a burgeoning, like when everything comes, like I love Edgar Wright films. And
right.
Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was my favorite movie of that year. I think it's a nearly perfect movie. So it's just kind of like seeing all worlds collide in such a risky kind of way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not as big a fan of Kick-Ass as you guys are, I think, but everything else has always have been films that I watch and go, wow, this is masterful. I've really enjoyed this. It's reinventing something. It's doing something new. I mean, you look at why do we have a new why is X-Men where it is now? And I think it's X-Men First Class, and what sort of relaunching that component of that franchise did. It reinvigorated something that I think everyone had given up hope on.
Absolutely agree.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, last comment on effects. And again, here is another example of beautiful contrast. To go from the violence in the church, followed up by the, dare I say, operatic performance of the exploding heads.
Yep.
That was
operatic and neon.
I mean, it was like it was going from this visceral reality of incredible gore, like human on human gore, to this like artfully choreographed little mushroom clouds of purple and green and beauty that you would just like. Of course, you would never associate with what would actually happen, but it was perfection for me. I mean, it was absolutely perfection.
I would have. Can I say my thoughts about that real quick?
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep asking permission.
I don't either. You've been on this show for like 3 years.
Is this my first podcast?
Yeah,
hey guys, long-time listener, long-time contributor. No, I originally, when that started happening, my first thought was, oh, well, of course, because if it was too many heads exploding, because we kind of saw the aftermath of Mark Hamill's head exploding, and it didn't seem to be a big color of light. Like a mushroom cloud of light.
Right.
Then, of course, that would push it to maybe that the ratings board would be too mad about that. But, of course, that's what Matthew Vaughn wanted. Until I remembered that in this insane film that's always teetering on the edge, he does have restraint in that you find out they're not really going to have you kill a dog. And they didn't kill one of their applicants in the first one. And they take time to explain to you, like, that's where it just becomes, again, I'm going to say almost genius. Because the Matthew Vaughn that directs most of this movie, of course would say kill a dog. Of course. Right. Because it's such a raw, brutal world. But then, the Kingsman, no, we're not crazy.
It is, but it's one of the ways that he is able to both set up the rules of the world and know exactly when it's okay to break those rules. I think not killing the dog, of course they're not going to kill the dog, because that would break a fundamental tenet of our protagonists.
But that was excruciating.
Yes.
That slow zoom in, the Mickey Rooney's on the gun and the dog and the gun and the dog, that went on for a laughably long time. I started hiding my face because I didn't know if I could trust him.
I was thinking about you, actually, because I was thinking about your ape-on-ape violence problem.
Right. I couldn't, I started turning away because I realized, they would never do this. And then reflecting on the movie that I'd saw, I was like, he might.
Yeah, but then think of it this way. Then you just reflect on the slow zoom in on the dog now that you know how it ends up. Even the dog knew it wasn't going to be shot.
Right.
That was like clear-eyed confidence. Like, go ahead, pull the trigger. We both know. Oh, maybe you don't know. All right, whatever. It'll play out.
But that made me reappreciate, sorry, to get to the end of my long point, that made me reappreciate the idea that I bet that head exploding was a true choice.
Oh, I had to be a choice. Yeah. It was such a tentpole moment in the film. It would have been so different. And following up that sequence with the fight on the main floor between Gazelle and Eggsy, that was a wonderful kind of finale to that piece of violence. Well, and of course, then the death of Valentine, the foot through the heart. So to speak. It was just a wonderful and much more grisly in the case of Valentine when he sees his own blood and projectile vomits. That was maybe the most disgusting part of the film. Yeah. For I think a lot of people who have a harder time with vomit than they do blood. So it was just I think a really touching moment. Anyway, I really loved the choices of the sort of orchestral explosions of heads. I thought that was really beautifully done. in
Agreed.
the context of this film. All right. Other things that stand out for you guys as we bring the ship around?
Did anything in the movie cross the line for you guys? One got really close for me. Just one.
What was that?
Well, one was the fact that they didn't know that we knew that Eggsy switched the glasses when he's with Michael Caine. I don't know. I assumed that we knew that he did that, and in the movie it turns out that that's a big surprise. But that's fine. Who cares? That's not it.
Did anybody? Let me just ask though. Did anybody? We all knew. Tell me, right? We all knew that they switched the glasses.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was such a
telegraphed
like a broad camera move of hey, what's one of those, and then like the up and down.
And now let me explain sleight of hand.
That was the only part that was a little disappointing. Of like, oh, I'm ahead of the film, and I've never been ahead of the film ever.
Okay, so what was your real one?
Eggsy's mother chopping down the door with the little girl inside crying. That for me felt too exploitative, into just a little bit too gross. Whenever they went back, because they had so many things that were like, the clock is ticking, everything's going crazy. I understand the need to sort of make it personalized and real, but that was the one time when I felt like, all right, Matthew Vaughn, you're getting a little bit much for me.
I don't know, Tommy. I don't think you could play that out any differently, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have so many examples of Eggsy looking out for mom, right? Whether it's fighting the bullies, whether it's whatever, it's always how much he loves his sister, and he's protecting his mom, right? And so that final act of protection, where if he hadn't said, Roxy, you got to call my mom and have her put the baby in another room, we would constantly be wondering, because we know she got one of these SIM cards. We would constantly be wondering, what is mom going to do when this turns on? Yeah, we have to have gone down that road. And for me, that I didn't have a problem with it. That one felt pretty good. I needed to see that resolved. Although I will say, at the end when she's holding the baby and she's saying, "Mommy would never hurt you. Mommy would never hurt you," except for that one time where I just went Jack Torrance on you and tried to get through the door.
My theater was laughing when it did that slow crawl back through the thing, and the daughter's sort of like looking at the hole in the wall. Yeah. Our theater were like laughing, not in a bad way, but just sort of like, yeah, right. That's insane. I'm broken forever. Thank you.
Anybody else have any moments that went too far?
I don't think so, but I thought that the moments with the princess were a little bit of a surprise, and it actually made me laugh quite a bit. The whole is an interesting way to play kind of the typical ending of a James Bond movie. But put their own little sick twist on it, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that playing with the end of a James, or just slapping it in the face?
I think slapping it in the face. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Do we have any final points, or shall we do our quick round the horn and rank it?
Tommy already said it, but I just wanted to again point out how wonderful I thought that Taron Egerton was. I thought he was just great in this role. He was edgy. He was perfect as the rough kid who was very street smart. But when he dressed up in his suit, he also was perfect in that role. I thought he played both sides of that very well, and I like Tommy said, this is a star in the making right here. He was just so strong in the role of our young Eggsy.
Agreed.
Absolutely agreed. Steve, final
Steve
points.
hated him, apparently.
Yeah, you hated him.
What do you got against Eggsy, Steve?
I've got nothing against Eggsy. Like I said, I think this is a fun film that is going to reward you the first time. And as I said, I think there's a lot of things going on worth exploring in terms of themes and Arthurian legends that are going to be rewarding upon multiple viewings. And it's one I'm looking forward to revisit again and again. And I think this film, I'm hoping is where we continue to see more great films from Matthew Vaughn, that he's really come into his own and will be granted, I don't know, permission or license to really, continue to flourish as a filmmaker.
Yeah, my guess is that 50 Shades of Grey, which very predictably took over the, box office, when that falls off a cliff, this one is just going to stay around for a while, because I can't imagine that the word of mouth will not be through the roof on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hope so. I really have this sense that this is a Keys to the Kingdom kind of a film for Matthew Vaughn, and also I think for young Eggsy. This was I really enjoyed this, and what a fantastic Valentine's movie.
Wait, are we talking about 50 Shades of Grey?
It's one that it absolutely took me by surprise. It is not a send up. It is not a lampoon. It is horrifically violent and filthy of mouth, but really, really, really well done.
Oh, that should be a blurb for it. That was wonderful.
Shall we rank it? Oh, Andy, do you have more?
Well,
Andy?
I didn't say my last thoughts.
Oh, I thought that was your last thoughts.
I was talking about you. You said anything before our last thoughts. I was talking about Eggsy.
I'm sorry, this is on me. This is totally on me.
Wow.
I own this, Andy. I'm sorry. What can I do?
No, I just wanted to say this was a and I'll be quick in the words of Tommy Hansen.
You take your time.
My wife, I asked her before the movie. This was our little Valentine's date movie. I asked her, and she hates spy movies. Well, she likes the Jason Bourne films, but James Bond types of movies, she just abhors them. So I sat down and I said, "So, what do you think? Are you gonna love it or are you gonna hate it?" She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna hate it. I have no expectation. I have zero expectation. There's nothing in this that I think I'm gonna like." And I just am not looking forward to this at all. I'm only here, as she said, to be on mole watch because she, from the trailer, she noticed how often Eggsy's mole on his neck seemed to appear and disappear. So that's all she wanted to pay attention to is his mole.
That's diabolical.
Like, okay. I know. It's so weird. But so I said after the movie, I'm like, okay, so did you hate it? And she's like, no, I loved it. I couldn't believe how much I loved this movie. And I think that's this is the thing that this film will kind of put people in a place where they're really going to end up enjoying it. Yes, you've got to get through all the potty mouth language and the intense violence. But once you get all through that, I think this is a film that creates this amazing world that is just so much fun. Yet also takes the spy thriller very seriously, and it works on all levels. So I absolutely enjoyed it.
I'm glad we came back around to that, Andy. That was good. That was worth it.
Well, thank you.
Let's rank it.
Kingsmen, they will save our world from lots of people, things, and in that one scene, Eggsy needed water wings. Men, it is time for us to do our part, and with our heart, let's rank this art. No more ado, film board, kickstart, Flickchart.
Tommy, you must have really loved this one.
I did.
That was really well done. And I should add, Tommy, this is just for you because... we did our little interview. If you haven't heard the show yet, we did our listener's choice delicatessen, and one of the bits that was cut out of that interview that we did with our listener who won the Pony Prize, Cameron Ryan.
Oh yeah, who I sent all the movies to.
You sent all the movies to, and if you haven't listened to that, you should because she reads all of your work on the show. But one of the things that she felt important to express was that she was disappointed that there was no Tommy Handsome song. As part of the Pony Prize win. So you just need to know that your work is deeply appreciated, much beyond the bounds of our call.
We're not just shouting into a tunnel?
No.
That's wonderful to hear. I would just always assume that Cameron was you in a wig. That's very sweet. Cameron, if you're listening, one love. All right, good.
Head over to flickchart.com/TNR Film Board, and you can see how we've ranked the last, what are we, 30, 31?
30. This will be 31.
This is 31, how we rank the 31. And, oh, man, I'm excited to see where this one lands. What do we think? Yeah. Is it going to break the top 10? Please tell me it's going to break the top. We have some crappy movies on this list.
I think I'm hoping it'll break the top 5. We'll see.
All right, let's do it with a bullet.
Kingsman, The Secret Service, or Divergent?
Kingsman.
Kingsman.
Definitely Kingsman. Kingsman or Looper? Getting tough already.
No, Kingsman.
No, Kingsman.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll see. I'll do Kingsman.
Okay, then I'm irrelevant. Then I don't have to mention. Good.
Okay.
You're welcome, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
We still like your opinion.
Well, as far as immediate watchability, Kingsman. So yes, Kingsman for me.
All right, Kingsman or Fury? I know you guys loved that, but I would say
Kingsman.
Kingsman.
Yeah, my Fury stuff has changed, by the way.
Oh.
A little bit. It's not a little, just it's sort of been downgraded. Just
It's because you saw American Sniper?
Yeah. No, it's because I saw Jupiter Ascending. There's a space tank.
20 minutes. There it was, folks.
Yeah.
Space Tank.
Every 20
Oh, my God, you had me at Space Tank.
Okay.
All right, so that's Kingsman.
Yes.
Kingsman or Edge of Tomorrow. Oh, Edge of Tomorrow here.
Ooh, snap. Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow. Flickchart.
Well, wait, are we ranking the films or are we ranking Tommy's songs?
I know, but
Because
that's what I
but
guess.
I think in both cases, I got to go Edge of Tomorrow. I think both cases.
Excellent. All right, Kingsman or Guardians of the Galaxy.
Kingsman. So my vote counts for 3. Tough one for you guys.
I think.
Okay, I will explain my vote on this one. And Pete,
Oh, God.
listen carefully.
Weirdly, it's going to be Now You See Me.
Because my vote is all because of you. All right,
Whoa.
this burden of this falls
Okay.
on your shoulders, Mr.
Okay.
Wright.
Okay.
I am going to vote Kingsman because of, as you so clearly brought to our attention, of balancing the origin story and the spy story of the intricacies of keeping those plots going and working that magic. Whereas with Guardians, although it is fun, there is really not a lot of plot per se. So based on that, I am going Kingsman.
Wow.
Man, Steve, you just explained to me so well that I'm also going to go to Kingsman.
Is that like listening to a mirror?
The
I
longest
think you
conversations.
changed my vote on that too. So Kingsman. Wow, look at that.
Wow.
Number 3
Steve.
out of 31.
Oh,
Wow. Huzzah.
nice.
That's wonderful. What's 1 and 2?
Well,
Gravity's
Edge of Tomorrow.
number 1. Edge of Tomorrow's number 2.
Fair enough. I'm happy with that.
Me
Yeah.
too. That
Long
feels
as-
great.
Hobbit is in the cellar. I'm just kidding. That person that wrote in, I love you. Okay.
Well done, gents. I feel like this was a triumph.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it was a great film, and we didn't even say. I thought Gazelle was better than most of the Bond villain.
Sidekicks.
Oh, the Bond
yeah.
girls?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good
sidekicks.
point.
Nice.
She was
Nice.
great. And the fact that she had metal blade legs, like, it was just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
How
great.
hard
That was-
is to just sort of make that work and not be like roll your eyes and crazy. Like,
What-
I just bought it.
Well, and think
Yeah.
about this. One of the best Bond villains was Oddjob, who had razor blade top hat, and
Right,
they
yeah.
just took the razor blades and put them on this woman's feet.
Yeah, put 'em on your feet.
Another contrast. Head to
Yeah.
feet,
And
right?
just feet. Oh, so layers.
So
Layer cake.
many layers. And we never said this out loud, but Mark Hamill plays a pretty good British professor.
He was
Yes,
neat.
he does. Yes, he does.
All right, I'm done. Do we have a movie pick for next time? Have we already done this? Can we let the people know what we're doing next
No,
month?
because I
I
thought
don't think we do.
Did we have one?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I thought we were doing the I thought we talked about the Thor killing the whale thing, but that got moved to like December, didn't it?
Oh, now it's
No,
Thor.
didn't we?
Whole thing. You're
Thor
just put
killing the
words
way you're doing with
together.
the Ron Howard.
Talking-
Yeah, the Ron Howard, whatever,
the vaccine or whatever. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Unless we've changed our plan, I thought we were, maybe painfully, but continuing the Divergent
Oh.
series. That's next month.
Oh God! With every
I know.
trailer
Don't
for this
have
movie,
to.
I get more
I know.
disappointed.
If
No.
we don't have to, I'm happy to do
Yeah.
something else.
yeah, we gotta
I think
do
there's
something
better
else.
options out there.
Please tell me there's
If
better.
it
You know
wasn't
what?
so close, I would say Chappie, but that's like in 2 weeks.
No. Rather than do Insurgent, let's just go back and do the interview. I would rather do that. No, see, I would. Or Jupiter Ascending. Wait, will that get a laugh?
Oh my gosh!
Oh.
I can tell you the entire plot. Okay.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we sure appreciate you listening and downloading. And, find us. Find us, you know where to go. thenextreel.com.
Find us on the street.
We're out of here. Find us on the street.
I refuse to let you get a clean edit point. Find us on the street. Hey, everybody, do you want to know Pete's phone number? Hold on. I'm going to work on it real quick. Go ahead.